Hey guys, welcome back to Mrs. G's Sewing Space. I'm glad you're able to join me on my series for pencil pouches. This is made out of a military, it's a digital camo fabric that I picked up at a local military surplus. The closure is Paracord, which I picked up at military surplus stores as well. I used it as the closure. This particular wrap does have a flap here. Whoop. Keeps everything in and keeps things from sliding out, which is really nice. This is made pretty much the same way as the first one that we made, but there's just some changes to the pattern and how we cut it out. I really like this. This ended up being, you remember how in the last video I said that outdoor fabric was really thick and plasticky? This one's not. This is very much thinner, but it's still tough and rough, and it will be able to last a long time, and I really like this one. It ended up being one of my favorites. It's not my favorite, but it is one of my favorites. And looking at this, like I said, here's the flap right here. We got all of our pockets right here, and we just roll it up. Now I ended up putting my closure on the opposite side, and I'm gonna be honest, I did that by mistake. I didn't mean to put it on this side. I meant to put it on the other side, but whatever, it's all right. So we'll just take it and roll it up anyway. So we're just gonna and because this particular one only has one thread string, and it ended up being about, let's see, how long is it? I got it about just over 25 inches long. I made it long enough to wrap around multiple times. So let's see, 1, 2, 3 times, and you can see right here. So you see right there, I'm peeking through my fingers. This knot here at the bottom is actually a, I think it's called a figure 8 knot, I think. I don't know, I can't remember. I ended up figuring out how to do this from other videos on YouTube, the Paracord videos that show you how to do the specialty knots. So I wanted to do a specialty knot here at the end to make it a little more, you know, a little more special. I mean, it is Paracord after all. And you just tuck it in, and there you go. And that knot there actually prevents it from sliding out. So, which, awesome security right there. So we're gonna move on to making this one. I hope you guys like the video. Subscribe and you'll get all my videos. Share this with whoever, anybody that you might be interested in. And always hit that thumbs up. That like button really helps out. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you at the end. Okay, so what you see here are the pieces for the pattern. You have 4 pieces. You have your 2 pocket pieces, your body piece, and then the flap piece. And in the next section, I'm going to show you how to put it all together so you can cut it out properly. So this is just a quick picture of what the flap and the body piece is supposed to look. Once it's all cut out together, they're cut together into one big body piece. So when you have 2 pattern pieces, in order to fit them together properly, you want to fold over the seam allowance of one pattern piece so you can place it on the other, and then you tape it all down. So what you're seeing me do right now is I'm literally folding the seam allowance down. I'm folding on the seam line that I had drawn, folding that edge down, putting a crease in it so that I can then place it and tape it down. Now that that flap is folded under and creased, I'm laying it on top of the body piece. So I'm lining up the seam lines so that they're right there, either butted up against each other or right on top of each other. Also matching up the seam allowances on the sides. And I'm just taping it in place temporarily. I would recommend magic tape, the tape that's fuzzy or soft looking, because it tears off easier than the clear tape. Here on this pocket piece, I'm showing you that I showed up 2 short sides and 1 long side. I ended up cutting 2 pieces of fabric out. I did not cut that on the fold. The square pocket, I did the same. It's cut out into 2 pieces. There's no fold, so I'm sewing up 3 sides and leaving 1 side unsewn. Now that all 3 sides have been sewn on each pocket, I'm going to do my trimming. So just like in the first video, I'm going to trim the corners, and I'm going to trim any extra seam allowances that could cause bulk, because I don't want multiple layers of fabric in my corners or in my seams. I'm going to trim off what I can where it's appropriate. You don't have to trim the entire seam, you just need to trim down mostly the corners so you don't get a lot of bulk in those corners. You can see here as I'm getting ready to flip my corners inside out, I'm using the dull end of a pin. The pin cap is a very dull point so that I can flip it and push the fabric against it to flip the corner out without poking a hole in it. Now everything's been flipped out, I'm going to finger press my seams flat. I'm going to roll the fabric in between my fingers and try to work this actual stitch line to the top so that there's no creases and no folds where the seam lines are. And then I'm going to pin everything in place so that it stays exactly where it's supposed to. Alright, I got everything pinned up, all my seams are flat, so now I'm going to take this time and go iron everything flat so it all creases where it's supposed to and everything stays in place. Okay, you see here where I'm placing my pockets. I'm lining up the raw edges and I'm leaving a seam allowance on the right hand side because I'm not sewing down that pocket within the seam on that right hand side because it's already been sewn. So I'm going to sew as close to it as I can possibly get when I put the other half of the body on top of the pockets, sandwiching the pockets inside the middle so that I can sew all the way around. Okay, so this is the Make Your Mark wax pencil. I think I got this in one of those little packets you get at Joann's. They're like in the magazine section, but they're wrapped in plastic, so you get the magazine and a pattern and a little something else, something like that. This is where I got this pencil from. But it's supposed to be a washable pencil, and I believe it is. So right now I'm just marking where I'm going to be sewing so that I can sew everything down. And remember, these are 1 inch increments for each pencil. So those 3 lines that I'm marking, I'm gonna, there you go, mark the lines and then sew it all up so I know exactly where I'm sewing and I don't wander and wiggle all over the place. Just so that you guys can see what I'm talking about, all those arrows are where I sewed down for the pockets themselves. But right there on the right side where that larger arrow is pointing to, I sewed down the edge of the pocket because this pocket is not being sewn into the seam itself, it's sewn down separately. So you need to make sure you leave your seam allowance there to be able to sew down your pocket. Okay, now that my pockets are sewn down, I've added the body right sides together, sandwiching in those pockets that I have sewn down. And right now I'm using my paracord to kind of figure out how much paracord I need to wrap around a full pencil wrap. And just trying to gauge and play, and this is what I'm doing right now. I'm gauging and playing. I'm just trying to figure out how much I want to do, thinking about the best way. Do I want to do a loop? Do I want to wrap it around? You know, just exactly what it is that I want to do. And this would be a good time and place to figure out what you want to do as well. If you want to use paracord, if you want to use a button, if you want to use an elastic band, if you want to use whatever it is that you want to use or you have on hand to create the closure for your pencil wrap. So here I am making sure everything's lined up. I know exactly what I want, where my cord is going to go, and it's going in the middle of the body, so I needed to make sure it was low enough. So when you have the flap's going to fold over, so the paracord needs to be in the middle of the body so it can wrap around in the middle. So now my body's on top, my cord is sandwiched in the middle with the pockets, and it's rolled up so that it won't get caught on anything. I'm just pinning things down, and then I'm going to sew my seam allowance all the way around. And I believe for this pattern I had a 1/4 inch seam allowance because I don't like large seam allowances in general. I try to keep them small where I can. And I also used my pin to mark exactly where I'm going to sew from, leaving an opening so that I can flip everything inside out. When you hit that corner where the pocket is, you can kind of see it here. You can feel the pocket through the fabric, so you just want to make sure your needle is going along the edge of the pocket and not through the fabric. You don't want to sew through what you've already sewn through because it'll come out wonky. And remember to take your time and go slowly if you need to, but use your fingers to feel that edge. Okay, so the next step, what do we do before we flip things inside out? We trim, trim, trim. We need to trim the corners, and we need to trim any extra fabric out of our seam allowances. So be careful when doing this. You don't want to poke holes into anything or cut through your seam lines, but trim out anything extra that might cause problems when you flip things inside out, because eventually you're going to sew around the edges once the right sides are facing outwards and you get back into your pockets and things. Take your time. Don't be afraid to squish all that fabric through that small opening to get things flipped inside out, and try to manipulate your fabric in the corner so things lay nice and flat if you can get it to do so. And you can see here that I'm just tugging and yanking and doing everything that I can, as well as pressing the seams, and roll those seams between your fingers to get them to come to the top, so that when you sew around the edges, they're not tucked so far in that it ends up taking room and making your bag smaller than what it should be. Okay, I'm pretty sure I took this to my ironing board and got everything ironed flat. Do that if you can do that. Once you get your seams finger pressed and everything's down where you want it, go iron it, so that way you can get ready to sew around it and you won't have any problems. So you see I'm taking that separate pattern piece, and this is where I'm going to mark where I need to sew across the top to create the actual flap. I'm marking on the seam line, not the bottom of the pattern where the seam allowance is. So everything I'm lining up is according to the seam lines. Okay, so I grab my ruler and I'm going to connect those lines that I had created. This is going to give me the line that I'm going to sew on to create my flap. I'm going to line it up as best as I can, making sure everything matches and it's as straight as I can possibly get it. Now I did fiddle with this for quite a few minutes, trying to make sure everything looked all right, and you can see that I'm making adjustments with my ruler and my washable pencil here, trying to get it to line up right, or so that it's pleasing to my eye. And you should do the same. Don't just do it willy-nilly. Make sure it looks good, because once that seam line's there, you don't want to go back and unstitch that. Okay, so as you saw, all at one time, I sewed all the way around the edge of the body and the flap, as well as sewing the seam line for the flap itself. They'll give us a nice little crease there to fold the flap over with. Bonus content, this is the figure 8 knot that I showed you at the beginning. I am going to leave a link to the video that I found this at below. The channel is called The Weavers of Eternity Paracord, and this is where I learned how to do that knot, and he has a whole bunch of other knots on this particular video, so I'll leave that link there below, and he can explain it to you better than I can. And there you go, it's all done. All you have to do is fill it up with your favorite pens or pencils or paintbrushes or whatever you're going to fill it up with, and wrap it up, and it'll wrap up nice and tight. I appreciate you guys following my channel and watching this video. Let me know if you have any questions. Leave those comments down below. Remember to hit the subscribe button and the notification button, and I would appreciate it. Enjoy your pencil wrap, and I got one more video coming out. It's my favorite one, and I'll see you in the next video.
Dum 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 dum